Hello. So this week we're talking about performance-enhancing drugs in professional sports, and basically our opinion on it. So for me, I don't think that PEDs have a place in professional sports, and I've believed this for a while. When I was doing my undergrad, I was in an ethics and sports class, and we had over a few classes a big discussion on this. And our professor played a lot of devil's advocate, saying, it doesn't make that big of a difference. Does it really matter? It would enhance it. And even with seeing those opinions and hearing the opinion of others, my opinion still stood. I just think that overall there's just lots of factors that go into it that just show there's no place for performance enhancing drugs in professional sports. For me, my first big thing is like health. So, we are trying to say that, sports promotes a healthy lifestyle, and, these professional athletes have nutritionists and trainers, but yet again, we're going to regulate them using a drug that could potentially be harmful to their body. In the reading, it talked about how some stimulants have effects on the body that can, cause stroke or heart attack. That in itself is scary. The physiological detriments that these drugs can do. But then there's things like steroid use that could affect you psychologically. The textbook, I think it was about page like 367, talked about how, when someone takes steroids, that, they go from this high and, this very good feeling, I guess, to, when they come down from the drug, feeling very depressed. And it changes their moods and emotions. I didn't know, imagine something about affecting their personal relationships too. And to me, I don't think, mental illness is such a huge thing now and such a big concern. Why would we have our athletes who need, mental toughness? Why would we have them put something in their body that could affect their brain and, their moods and emotions? Especially when we're talking about professional sports, we want these people to be, figures in the media. How are they supposed to be figures in the media if they can't control their emotions, and it's due to a drug, not just, a mental illness that they could seek help or assistance for. So first, yeah, big thing, health. I think my second thing would be that, in an article I read for my summary, the woman who wrote the article talked about how people argue that PEDs should be legalized in sports because it, evens the playing field. Now everyone gets a chance to use this and, compete with the best. And I don't agree with that. And she made a really good point talking about how, the United States, they could have teams that have loads of money that they could put into performance enhancing drugs and having the right trainers and doctors to, administer it and monitor it. But you have small countries that, are in the Olympics, and her example was Samoa. Countries like that, they're not going to have the finances, they're not going to have the resources, or, to be able to regulate, monitor, or even give their athletes the opportunity to use performance enhancing drugs. So for those who say it's going to even the playing field, it would still stand that I don't think it would. I think it would just create an even larger gap. Big countries like the U.S. and Great Britain and China and, Canada have the resources to get all this new training technology and to look into nutrition and all this stuff. There's so many technologies that enhance sport performance now that these big countries are able to have access to, which these small countries do not. A big thing that I've seen, I've done other assignments, and I'm a soccer player and a soccer coach, so I look at women's soccer a lot. And I think that, one big thing is that our women's soccer team, the U.S. women's national team, is, has such a big impact in women's soccer and, is making such a difference, and they're one of the best because the U.S. has that technology that some countries won't offer their women's teams. So we're talking about countries of, equal size not even offering their women's team equal technology and resources. But now we're talking about, as a whole, we want countries to, if performance-enhancing drugs were legalized, be able to give it to equal the playing field. And I don't think that would happen. And lastly, I just think that professional athletes are supposed to be seen as role models. Many kids, when they play sports, we talk about, I've coached young kids, we talk about hard work and dedication and, determination and not giving up, because if you want to be the best, you have to put in the work. Right now I coach at a college. I coach an assistant coach for women's soccer. And we talk about you have to work hard at training every day. You have to earn your spot. You have to earn playing time. And I think with things like performance-enhancing drugs, especially in professional, game, these people aren't, earning their playing time. They're not earning their spot anymore. They might have this talent, but now on top of it, they're taking performance-enhancing drugs, to get them to the next level. I just think that it's not a role model that I would want. If I had children, I wouldn't want my own children to look up to these athletes that are using performance-enhancing drugs, because as a past athlete and now coach, I want my kids to have the morals instilled in them to work hard to get what they want, not just, take the easy way out by taking a drug that will make them, be a better athlete. And lastly, an argument that was in the article that I read, and that was in my writing, was she talked about how that the using performance-enhancing drugs, people say, would enhance the level of play, so it would be better for viewership and it would be a more interesting game. And again, I just think I don't believe that either. I think the beauty of sport right now is that, without performance-enhancing drugs, is that there's players that have this raw, natural talent that they work hard to make great, and they, work hard to be the best, and that's why they're playing their professional sport. In women's soccer, players like Carly Lloyd, they're excellent because she has raw talent and, works super hard to be the best. That is something that's inspiring, and that is, I feel like, the true sports, true athletes, that's what that is. So I think with something like performance-enhancing drugs, it would put a, damper on that true grit, true athlete kind of feeling. Also from actually one thing that really affected, another thing that I thought about from someone in the discussion boards, they were talking about how, we'd then have this gap where we'd have, these athletes that were using PEDs and athletes that weren't. And then we'd have athletes competing to be the best athlete that's using performance-enhancing drugs over just being the best athlete. And, I just thought that's a really, interesting thing to think about, how there would then be this gap. And there would be where there are some athletes who wouldn't want to partake, and, would this then try to transition into non-professional sports and collegiate sports? I just think it causes overall a bigger problem. I think, when you weigh a pro and cons list, there's way more cons than there are pros. So for me personally, I don't think it has a place in professional sport. Sport is meant to entertain, and, for people who are an athlete and they're playing a sport, it's for enjoyment, to have fun, a stress relief. It's a social outlet. It's a way to learn different social things and moral skills. And I just think sports should stay that way. And, we should worry less about, we should be more concerned with, the wholesome of the sport and, keeping that spirit of, being on a team and stuff like that alive, and, worry about progress and, becoming better in our sport rather than doing whatever it is just to win. Thanks.